really huge flavor impact, and so we'll just use the kind of fruit levels that we need to accomplish that.
Okay, following on that, he refers to a bit of a jelly-like taste of using fruit in secondary or the fermented wine-like profile of primary. And, of course, he's asking what's better. I don't know that there is an answer to that. It's going to be based on your own particular taste.
Yeah, I would say if you're going to use if you're going to use fruit in the secondary, don't make that the secondary like 5 months on. Get your primary fermentation rocking, and get through 60 or 70 or 80% of the sugar that you're going to intend to ferment out of the base mead, and then get that fruit in there while it's still working, and then let it go. Because if what he's talking about is what happens after a yeast is basically shut down, and then you add fruit to it, and it doesn't really invigorate the fermentation again, or you're using whatever's left of that culture that's managed to survive the 4 or 5 months that it's been sitting around, then that's not an ideal situation. You want to get it in there while the yeast is still working, and then you're not probably going to end up with that jammy character.
I guess it's kind of like the equivalent of, if you're going to leave it a long time, it's like the equivalent of adding the fruit juice pack from a wine kit.
There you go. And yeah,
which, I've made those and they taste good, but it's a different flavor profile from just having fermented the fruit in the first place.
I do like it. I mean, when I say I like it, I like the character that you get out of having all of the fruit and all of the honey and all of the yeast working together in that 20 whatever odd days that it's got that primary fermentation going on. There's something, in my estimation, pretty magic that happens if you get enough fruit going with a really delicious honey and the right yeast that does and it gives you something that's what I think is more integrated more quickly.
I'm in Miami, and basically I get a lot of tropical fruit. Is there anyone in particular that you think I should maybe try out since I have access to them? Like which one do you wish you had access to as a fresh fruit, like I can get from the farms down here?
Oh, yeah. If I was down there, it would be lemons and limes for me. Those two are. I love the blend of lemon and lime and honey, and that is something that we have had a long-standing intention of pursuing at Schramm's, and we have not ever piloted it to the point where we think we've got something that we really want to market. But lemons and limes, and really, really good ones. That's what I would be going for, because that's where you can. Like I said, you can rock people's socks if you go out and get the kind of quality of fruit that you probably have access to, and that's just a matter of, I'm sure for you, it's some tire rubber and some phone calls, but yeah, that's what I would be all over.
All right, well, getting out to the lemon and lime farms.
Well, and the South has spectacular blackberries too. Florida's got blackberries, and so does Georgia, and so do Georgia and Louisiana. So yeah, I would be all over those too.
Yeah, we really do have great berries here.
Oh, great, cool. All right, thank you.
Okay. I got a question about barrels here that I didn't know how to answer because I've never used one. Mondor's asking about getting a 5-gallon whiskey barrel and wants to make a long-aged mead. He's thinking 7 years for his son's 21st birthday, and was wondering what are some good options, recommendations, benefits, and concerns of barrel aging for 7 years of a Bochet versus traditional versus a dark fruit mead.
Well, if I was going to be dealing with a barrel, I don't know if I would be wanting to deal with it for 7 years. I would be inclined to yeah, you may want to barrel age that, and if you've got a small whiskey barrel that you've got access to, understand that the smaller the barrel is, the more oak you're going to get out of it, because the amount of surface area as a function of how much actual volume is in the mead, or is in the barrel, is really high. The smaller the barrel, the higher the amount of exposure that you have to oak. So you're going to want to test it and make a decision on when you've reached the point of oak flavor saturation that you want, and then back into glass. And that's the approach that we've taken when we've used barrels. And I am inclined to say that you're going to want that the Bochet is probably going to be a pretty good candidate. You're going to want something with a lot of flavor, because oak is big. Yeah. And so you're going to want to find a honey that you're going to start with that has a lot of character, and the Bochet will add a lot of character because of the caramelization. So that's a good possibility. I think a big fruit mead will work as well, and certainly something with high levels of acidity and tannin, which obviously work really well with wine and French oak, for example, or wine and Hungarian or American oak. That works terrifically. So if you wanted to do something like a big dry blackberry, yeah, that would be spectacular, and it will work well. But you may want to. I mean, even the people that are taking the gigantic Bordeaux and Burgundies and Napa Valley cabs are only leaving them on the fruit in a lot of instances for 12 to 18 months. And that's with a 225 liter barrel, which has vastly less surface area per liter than a 5-gallon barrel would. And if you're using a whiskey barrel, just be careful. you can get wherever there is. You can get there in a hurry.
Yeah, that's a
you don't want to overdo it.
Yeah,
you don't want to overdo it, or you get what's commonly referred to as chateau plywood.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I've always been kind of partial to spirals and or chips because it's so much easier to get off the oak. I mean, yeah, you could take it out of the barrel, I guess, but that means you're going to have to be checking that pretty regular until, to find out when it's going to hit that point where you want to stop.
Yeah, and I think this is the great thing about mead is you've got if this is something that you're going to look to make and serve in 6 or 10 years, you don't have to be in a hurry to figure out what approach you're going to take with this. Mm-hmm. You could spend 4 to 6 months buying different options in terms of chips or staves or other oak treatments, and messing around with quarts of mead that you've made as a test batch to fool around with, and then go ahead and figure out which one you really like, and then treat the mead that you are really proud of and want to sauce up, and you can treat that later and give it the treatment that you like the best, and then, as I said, if you're doing it with staves and carboys, that's great. Or if you're doing it with the barrel itself, you can keep an eye on it. The most important thing here is get yourself a wine thief and be prepared to get in there and test it on a regular basis, and don't just sort of walk away and leave it. Get in there and test it every 2 weeks or every month to find out when it's hit the spot that you want.
Okay, thank you very much for answering that. Also, I'm guessing there's also some handling issues with barrels. You can't let them dry out all the way, and you don't want to let them get contaminated with anything.
Well, and if you're this is once again a situation where if you're dealing with 5-gallon barrels that have been used for distillation from somebody that you were able to acquire from, and there are a lot of small distillers around these days. The home mead maker has has the commercial mead maker at a huge advantage. The people that are involved in this commercially are supposed to steam treat their barrels and then get them, airtight, and then add the mead to them. Whereas if you're a home mead maker, you can just get your barrel, fill it up with water, make sure it's airtight or watertight, and then if you're saying that what I really want to accomplish in this is to gain some flavor from a particular bourbon, go buy a fifth of that bourbon and pour it into the barrel and swish it around in there and let it sit there for a day or two and drain it out, as much of it as you get back, and now you're sure that barrel is conditioned and ready to go. You guys have got us, once again, in the enviable position of being able to do stuff like that process, TTB approved process does not let us do. And I saw a note that someone said wine thief process, and a wine thief is just it's a glorified version of a drinking straw that you put your thumb over the end of. A wine thief is in its nicest form, it's a beautiful glass tube, or in its most rudimentary form, it's a bunch of sections of plastic tube that are interlocking, that are it's tapered at one end, it's small enough to fit in through the bung hole of a barrel, and it's got a hole on the other end that you put your thumb over, and you stick it in, and you the process. If there's one trick to understand with wine thieves, it's that they're filling up from a tiny little hole in one end, and there's another hole on the other end, and if you're going to put it in there and extract it with liquid in it, it's going to take it a while to fill up. So if your barrel or your carboy, for that matter, is full right up to the neck, when you push that wine thief in, it's just a big plastic tube that's displacing a lot of space, and you want to push it in there nice and slow so that the liquid that you're going to capture and pull out and taste travels up into the wine thief slowly, and you don't want to push it any faster than it's filling. Otherwise, you're going to spill your meat all over the place, which I've never done.
I guess
No, you've never done that.
It goes without saying you need to sterilize that wine thief pretty well, huh?
Yep. We keep buckets of Star San around the meadery all the time, and we just throw. When it's time to use it, it gets washed after it gets used every time. So it's stored in a clean state, and then it gets thrown in the Star San for a few minutes, and then pulled out, allowed to air dry, and then used to pull up the samples.
Okay.
Cool. Let's see, what else have we got?
Well, Scott had one more question. He wants to know, Ken, what is your favorite mead that you produce, and can he have one?
First, answer the second question is no.
There you go, Scott.
Sorry.
Told you that
Sorry,
would be the
Scott.
answer.
You can.
Well, if he goes to your store.
Yeah, if he comes into the store. The Heart of Darkness is produced in small batches because there's not a whole lot of fruit, and we keep a number of bottles that we use at the tasting room to pour 1 ounce pours for people, and they're not cheap, and I apologize for that. But when I tell people how much time it actually takes to do this beverage, my hourly wage on this beverage is really low. It's probably the Heart of Darkness. It goes back and forth between the Heart of Darkness and the Statement Reserve. I love them both. They both have a certain level of purity and of expression of fruit that I love.
Yeah, I have to say that's right up there for me too, and yeah, I'm looking forward to that bottle that I have in my stash next month.
There's a certain level of attachment to that because it is the sweat of my brow.
Yeah.
So that's valuable. And I'm sure everybody who